from the Daily News joins us here live from the Giants facility.
Damn,
Good
calling me out, Dave. Calling me out.
Appreciate Where are you? You have a beautiful setup there.
Thanks. No, I'm at home. Today's Zoom calls. Then COVID allowed these teams to take a day away at the facility. So I mean,
that's a nice setup you got going on there. All right,
thank you. Same to you.
Let's rifle through some quick questions. Have you ever seen a run defense like this before?
Ooh, that's a very loaded question. I guess the short answer is no.
Yeah.
I mean, after that Denver game, Dave, I think you would agree that as much as this disappoints you, nothing is surprising you now.
Mm-mm.
I think the most disappointing part about their run defense is teams are attacking the same areas of the field. Sometimes it's dressed up differently. They're gapping up the defensive linemen in different ways, catching them off guard. It just doesn't often look like the players are ready for what's coming. It feels like they're reacting rather than attacking, being aggressive and being on their toes, right? They're on their heels instead. And frankly, I understand why Deonte Banks gets put up on the big screen for his either lack of effort or poor tackling and all that. But
unbelievable.
But I'm done hearing the constant blame for bad run defense on an outside corner. I mean, their defensive line is getting moved everywhere in the running game. A lot of these runs, the same way that Saquon last year suddenly had a great season out of nowhere, just because he was able to get to the line of scrimmage with that Eagles offensive line without having to do a spin move in the backfield or hesitate because someone broke through. That's what's happening with the Giants. You're getting no penetration into the backfield. So the running backs are hitting a huge gap or hole at either top or near top speed. That doesn't excuse the linebackers, the safeties, the corners, and the things that they're not doing right. But everything starts at the line of scrimmage, both sides of the ball. And Carl Banks said what he said last week for a reason. And honestly, Dave, Dexter Lawrence gets called out like that by a Giant legend and has one combined tackle and a tackle for loss, and that's it in the whole game. What's going on here?
It's really, really bad. The thing that's so disturbing, I have so many questions, but what's so disturbing to me is Saquon last week. Saquon's a Hall of Fame level running back, right? And Christian McCaffrey, the same thing. But then it's all right, Tank Bigsby, he looks like a Hall of Fame running back. Brian Robinson, who's a journeyman NFL running back. He Pat, anybody can run on this defense. So my question for you is it more player blame? Is it more coach blame? Do each side of this thing get equal blame in your mind?
I think it's both. I think it's wrong to put it on just one on either side and not the other. You're absolutely right that the major issue, first of all, getting gashed by a team starting running back is bad enough. It's losing you the game. The reason this is not just bad, but it's fireable and it's get these coaches and everybody out of here is because, to your point, when these games are on the ropes, the Giants defense is folding like a cheap tent. Tank Bigsby, no matter how good or athletic he is or how underrated someone out there thinks he is, should never in any world go for over 100 yards on 9 carries against an NFL defense unless the players are starting to sag their shoulders, unless they're not putting their full effort in on certain plays. And what that means, it doesn't mean all 11 guys quitting. It means on any given play, one guy cutting a corner just because, you know what? I'm going to go get Abdul Carter on the Tank Bigsby 32-yard run. Abdul Carter is going right upfield, head down, blinders on, and basically Abdul looks like his job is I'm either going to sack the quarterback or if he gets the ball out or hands it off, I'm just not going to be in the play. And you just can't have that in the NFL. And, I'm not just singling him out. That was just one example of one play. But that creates the hole that then Bigsby gallops through in order to get to the second level at top speed, break 2 tackles, and off we go. And so it's a trickle-down effect. I think that it's on the coaches because if your team's not giving full effort, I've had NFL sources, coaches, I've had people reach out to me over the last few weeks and say, and ask me, right? Trying to call me on the carpet as an NFL person in NFL media and say, why is nobody talking about the fact that their film in the second half of these games looks like the guys are giving up? I mean, this is what people are saying to me. And so I said, well, I think I'm covering that, but to coaches, to people in the NFL who run a professional operation, this is why when I write about this, some people think I'm harsh about that Dable should be fired, Shane should be fired. Dave, why are we even having a conversation about whether, the level of effort from 1 to 10, what's acceptable, what's not? These are the kind of things that mean that the culture's rotten, the way the place is run is rotten. And I asked Brian Dable this today, right before I got on the show here. He kept saying it's on everybody. It's not just one person. And I said, Brian, does that really address the actual issues? Because you're not singling out this person on that play, this corner on that play, that linebacker on another play. Now, he said, well, those issues do get addressed internally. I don't see the results of them on the field, though.
Well, clearly there's no results because the results are heading in the wrong direction, not the right direction. Pat, it's another year of 2-7, right? We're now first week of November, and the season is, for all intents and purposes, over yet again. And the fans, and I hear this on my radio show and here on this show, are sick and tired of it, and they're done with it. Is there any way in your mind that Brian Dable and or Joe Shane can possibly be back next season? And are they tied at the hip, or could one return while the other one doesn't?
I think that Joe Shane, the most likely scenario, I would say, is Joe Shane stays, Dable gets fired. The second most likely scenario is that they both get fired. And the third most likely scenario, the least likely, is that they both stay. That's my opinion, my informed opinion. I don't think it should be that way. I don't even see the arguments on the Joe Shane front. I really don't. But he is tethered very strongly to ownership. Ownership clearly, and it's probably in part because they're comparing everything to the way Dave Gettleman did it prior. But they view everything they see as far as when he says, here's how we picked this player. Here are the spreadsheets we called up. Here are the people we talked to. Here's the research we did. Ownership and the Giants organization is impressed with those things. Now, it should matter that you're missing.
Are they impressed by Evan Neal? Are they impressed by Tyler Nubin? Are they impressed by John Michael Schmitz? Like, you could sit here and show me TPS reports until I'm blue in the face, but unless these guys are capable on the field, are they impressed with Deonte Banks? And I know you don't blame him for tackling, but he can't cover anybody. So, Pat, yeah, you can sell me on why these are good picks, and maybe that is believable at the time. But, I mean, my eyes tell me these are not good players.
No, yeah, and I blame him for not tackling. I just mean, it doesn't start with a corner when you're talking about run defense. But, yeah, no, to your point, on Joe Shane, Jackson Dart, the idea behind this year, coming off of 3-14 and the GM and coach coming back, the entire sales pitch from Shane and Dable was the quarterback's the problem. Let us drop the quarterback in and it all will look the way that we're telling you it will, the way you want it to. This will start humming. And so therefore, in Joe Shane's mind, my tackle will look better. My safety will look better. My run defense will look better because we're scoring more points and teams have to throw on us and all those things. They've lost 3 in a row. Their quarterback is promising for the long term, and yet they just keep losing games. So the premise of how things were going to turn around, how they were going to get fixed was a flawed one. It was a faulty one. And it was undercut as well by the fact that the GM chose the wrong player again with Russell Wilson. And the season was essentially over before it started with the 0-3 start with him. And remember, Dave, this is another thing, and this is a whole other conversation, but they couldn't land a bunch of their top targets at that position in the first place because they're not an attractive destination. Why? Because of the look you see in Dexter Lawrence's face right now. Now, he's party to all of this losing. He doesn't have the right to say this is a losing team that I'm a part of. He's a part of it. Mm-hmm. But Dave, you see the look in his eyes the same way that now he's not the leader Saquon is, but these players like McKinney, Saquon, Daniel Jones, these guys who go somewhere else and see there's a different way of doing it. And it's like they've seen the light. Dexter, now you can see it. He needs it. You can see it. And I asked him, does he still want to play here? And he said, yes. But the reality is they just don't have enough on the field. And then when they do make plays and give themselves a chance, the coaching staff doesn't have the ability to elevate them over the top.
So when you look at the big picture here, and this is my concern, if Shane is still at least within fighting distance of being able to keep his job, do wins and losses matter? And if they do, and I want him out, or Giants fans want him out, is it in our best interest to root for the Giants to continue to lose games?
Interesting question. I personally think if the idea behind that would be to hold the organization accountable to make it better in the long term, I'm all for it when it comes to being a true fan. Like, I think that is loyalty on a fan's part to do what you think is the right thing for the organization's future. As far as how should fans now approach the rest of this season, I do think with the trade deadline right on our doorstep here, I think even though you want to support Jackson Dart, you also don't want the Giants doing anything that is going to compromise that long term either. It's very dangerous to operate from a position of desperation when a GM is running a trade deadline like this. And acquiring something at this time rather than acquiring assets and building, it's tricky. It's a balance because on the one hand, you want to support Dart. You can't leave him hanging like you have, but you also don't want to give somebody the blessing to make crazy changes and trade draft picks when it's not even their draft to touch next year. I think that Joe Schoen is safe unless the bottom falls completely out. What safe's the wrong word. I think Joe Schoen is more likely to return unless the bottom falls out. Dave, you're going to ask me what that means. As far as an X and O's number of wins and losses, I know this is probably not the answer you're looking for, but when they finished 3-14 and they kept the GM and coach, I really lost a lot of any semblance of understanding of where the Giants barometer is. Like, you and I used to be able to, like, if we sat down on a couch having beers watching football on a Sunday, you could tell me, the Jaguar standards are kind of here versus where the Giants as an organization, because of their tradition, is here. And then the Cowboys should be here, but their owner doesn't really pay enough attention, so they're here. Every organization has like a standard and a level that is satisfactory for them to be. The Steelers is a good example of one that it's just not okay for them to have a losing season, right? And so I just don't know right now what makes Giants ownership finally throw their hat and, kick the door and say, that's it. Because I've seen so many things that over the years with all these other coaches and even general manager Dave Gettleman that cost people their jobs, they just keep piling up on this regime and the guys are still working here. So I don't know, 5 wins, 2 wins, 3 wins. I would say, in my opinion, anything under 5 would be the bottom falling out to me. But 5 wins, do you feel good about Joe Schoen if this team scrounges 5 wins together?
But I was telling the guys before, Pat, like 5 wins is pathetic, but it's better than 3. And you can't argue that the schedule's been brutal, right? So if you're Joe Schoen and you get called onto the carpet, you get called into John Mara's office. All right, you know what? I'm so dissatisfied. Well, Mr. Mara, I won 5 games. We had a rash of injuries. We had the toughest schedule in all of football, and I now have the quarterback. So we clearly are moving in the right direction. Let me finish the job. I'm not saying he should keep his job, but I think that for the Giants fan, in your best interest might be, if you want these guys gone, might be to root against the Giants now.
I don't disagree with that. I mean, I'm not going to tell people what to do, but I don't disagree with you in the fact that argument's already worked for the GM, right? The argument of injuries, this player undercut us. And I should add this, Dave, because we're at that time of year now. Last January, it became clear to Brian Daboll, once they started meeting with John Mara and ownership, it went from Joe Schoen talking about we to talking about me.
Mm-hmm.
And Daboll recognized that as much as this was the collaborative process and they kept doing those joint press conferences, when push came to shove, he could see that, I'm going to end up walking the plank on my own. And once that happened last January through a series of conversations, they really thawed their working relationship, chilled for several months there. And then obviously they got together, they did the draft, they did free agency, all that kind of stuff. But even when they were in the same places, going and doing the same work, it wasn't the same. Now, Daboll, we talked to today, even as far as the trade deadline, really kind of kept like a plane of glass between him and Shane. Was basically like, I'm in those conversations, but I'm only coaching the team that's on the field. I guess I bring that up to say Shane is, there's a process that already almost played out last year for this general manager to blame the coach and blame some players and to stay. And Dable knows that because he almost went through it. It almost cost him his job last year.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's going to be a very interesting stretch run of this season because the ownership is, as far as I understand, is still leaning on keeping the GM. So yes, if you're a fan and you don't want this GM here, probably the only way it happens is if they lose out or they only win one more game, the bottom falls completely out. And really the way that would happen, Dave, is if Jackson Dart, I hope it doesn't happen, knock on wood, but is if Jackson Dart can't play.
Well, it's only a matter of time. I mean, if he keeps playing the way he plays and they keep running him down 17 and take that kind of hit the way he continues to, it's only a matter of time until Jackson Dart doesn't play. And I don't know how much of that's on Dable. Like Brian Dable, like down 17, couldn't you say something to the effect of, I want you to stay in the game. I want you to lead us on the final drive. The game is, for all intents and purposes, over. But if you're going to take hits like that, I can't play you. I'm going to take you out of the game. So make wise decisions. I don't know that I've ever seen a quarterback make more just dumb, I'll say, decisions in games than Jackson Dart. He takes punishment like I've never seen before.
Yeah, he's reckless with his body, similar to how Daniel Jones was when he was here. Honestly, it was like a similar conversation. And yes, you're right. So the coach's job in those scenarios is to be the adult in the room because players are always going to want to play.
Especially rookie players, right?
Yes, they always are going to want to play. And it's also even tricky to do it the way you did, which is like, hey, I'm putting you on the field, but don't take off, don't risk yourself, like just play within yourself because he's that kind of player. So in that moment, like even when I asked Dable about the decision to leave Dart in, first of all, he nearly got killed over the middle by Bethune, the linebacker. He got hit hard and was banged up. He's lucky he didn't get hurt worse there.
Mm-hmm.
But I asked Dable about the decision to leave him in, and he says, yeah, well, at the time it was 34-24. So first of all, it was not. It was 34-17 when you left him in the game. Then he scored that touchdown after taking that big hit to make it 34-24. And then he says, yeah, and then if we get the onside kick, then there's 50 seconds left. And I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, and then what?
Right.
Like, what do you mean? Like, listen to what you're saying. Those are the things that, again, like I said, the bad run defense, it's bad. But then the lack of effort on certain plays as backup running backs are running all over you, that's what gets you fired. Brian Dable, win some, lose some. That doesn't get you fired. But losing constantly and making decisions where you're mismanaging the clock, kicking field goals when you should go for touchdowns, leaving your franchise quarterback in the game and putting him at risk. Dan Quinn looks like an absolute moron after that last night. And you could see his look on the sideline. The second he got hurt, you could see Quinn knew it. It was like, I fell asleep at the wheel. I was wrong. That's the position Dable keeps putting them in. And Dave, let me just say this. Here are the numbers. 2-7 this season for the Giants. 3-18 in their last 21 games. 5-21 or 3-18 last 21. 5-21 in their last 26. 5-17-1 in the NFC East. Let me say that again. 5-17-1 in the NFC East. 2-14-0 against the Eagles and Cowboys.
It's really an embarrassment. Last one, let you go. Love chatting with you, by the way. Thanks. And that is trade deadline. It's tomorrow, 4:00. What do we think? My producer said they're going to trade Jalen Hyatt. I don't know who in their right mind would want at least exploring.
Yeah. So Neal and Hyatt are two players that the Giants, even though Hyatt was on the field and returning kicks in this game, these are two players that the Giants have shown they don't have full trust in. They haven't been able to make enough plays for them, or they have shown an inability to know how to use them. And so they're trying to get something for these guys. I think that just dealing them for a 7th or a conditional 7th or something like that, at that point, why is it worth it? And honestly, I think the Giants have managed these situations with optics as their number one thought process anyway. Like, in other words, They want to do a trade that looks good. They don't want to do a trade that looks like we dumped a failed first or third round pick. So they're going to govern it not just by what they get back, but how it looks, which is, again, how they operate under this regime. As far as what the Giants are acquiring, I think even if you, like me, think 2-7 season's over, you can only support Jackson Dart if it's reasonable. You have to do your due diligence as a general manager and Joe Shane here, no matter what you're going to end up doing. So you make the calls on Jalen Waddle. You call the Saints on Chris Olave. You call the Raiders on Jacoby Myers, all these things. You do kick the tires on all these things. But in the end, I think the organization has to have some sense of sanity to this. And any upgrades have to be reasonable and not expensive. And it's just a tricky situation to be able to balance those two things. Because if you're acquiring a player of worth and import, you're probably either paying a high draft pick or you're extending him with a significant salary. And the Giants aren't exactly flush with cap space either. So they're up against it. And I think what you can probably expect is less activity than you would like to see.
I lied. I have one more for you because we've had this question thrown a couple times out. First of all, I heard John Mara did not look great yesterday. Left at halftime. Really looks like he's having a rough time in his recovery from cancer, which, you know, aside from football, obviously is real life, and we feel awful about that. But
yeah,
I mean, what's the succession plan? I mean, because one day he's not going to be running this organization. Who's next in line to run this organization?
Yeah, no, as you said, first of all, you know, best wishes to John and to the Mara family. It's sad to see. You hope to see him bounce back quickly. I know he's fighting hard. The Giants, even though John Mara, Steve Tisch are the co-owners, and now you have Julia Koch in the mix as well as a minority owner, the Mara family has always had, and the Tisch family have always had more family members in high-ranking positions with the Giants involved in these organization-wide discussions and decisions. And so Chris Mara, Tim McDonald, John Mara's nephew, there's Steve Tisch, there's Jonathan Tisch, his brother and the treasurer of the organization. Julia Koch now joins that mix as well. And so I think they already work as a collective. Now, what you're asking me, though, is we all know that John stands as far as who represents the Giants because of their history.
Outward-facing person, right? He's the ultimate. It feels like he's the ultimate front-facing decision maker. Yes.
Yes, he's the president, CEO, and he's the ultimate buck stops here figurehead and person, and who warrants and commands that respect in the organization. I think the answer probably would be, you know, either Chris Mara in the immediate future, or Chris Mara in the immediate future to Tim McDonald eventually one day. I think is a name that you should remember that I know is already on people's minds. He's, you know, running player personnel, helping run player personnel, and has worked his way through the organization. I definitely think that those are both names to keep an eye on, but especially Tim from a standpoint of being the future and you're not just talking succession plans, but also the future of what the Giants look like and who ends up in that position. That would not shock me.
All right. Well, Pat, you were terrific, even though you were late, and we do hold that against you a little bit, but you're really talented and bring a lot of great insight and funny and all those good things. So thank you again. And we'll do this again at some point soon.
Yes, and please, everybody, join me on YouTube, Talking Ball Live with Pat Leonard. We're post game every week from the stadium, and then also Tuesday night, gonna go live after the trade deadline passes. So tomorrow night, check us out. It's PL on NFL is the handle there. Dave, I appreciate you having me on every time, man. It's a blast.
All right. That, of course, is Pat Leonard from the New York Daily News and Talking Ball, and he does a great job. So if you like that interview, check out this video or other interviews. And of course, as always, don't forget to subscribe.